GDC, London Games Festival, Gamescom. Every year, studios flock to these and other industry events, looking to connect with old friends and acquaintances, network, learn about the latest trends, and in many cases, seek funding opportunities for their projects. These events can be incredibly valuable, but they also come with a significant investment of time and money. Between entry fees, flights, accommodation, and the fact that some of these events can last a full week, attending is rarely a small commitment. So, if your goal is to go to one of these events, hoping to start conversations with publishers, it might be worth taking a step back and asking yourself whether you think your project is truly ready to be shown and pitched. Because when these opportunities do come up, you may only get one real chance to make a strong impression. Hi everyone, welcome to another video of Life About Games. As usual, my name is Alex, and today we're going to talk about when a studio should start thinking about pitching its project to publishers, why timing now matters more than ever, and what are publishers looking for when they assess risk. We're living through a strange moment in the video game industry right now. On the surface, things are looking strong. And according to Matthew Ball's latest industry report, global content sales reached $195 billion in 2025, which is an all-time high with 5.3% growth year over year. But once you look beneath those numbers, the picture becomes a bit more complicated. Funding for game studios fell by 55% in 2025, while competition remains higher than ever and discoverability continues to be a major challenge. Player growth has slowed down and in some regions even fallen below pre-pandemic levels, which means most of the revenue growth is now coming from emerging markets and increased player spend. Attention is also harder than ever to win. Games like Roblox take up a huge share of player time, which means new releases are not just competing with each other, they are also competing with games that people are already deeply invested in, as well as other forms of entertainment, such as social media and streaming. And on top of that, even large, well-funded projects that were expected to be surefire hits are finding it difficult to break through. Just take Highguard as a recent example. It had an experienced team behind it. It closed the Game Awards, and yet still struggled to find enough momentum to sustain itself. That is a reminder that high production value alone is no longer enough. All of this to say that even though funding is still out there, the bar is simply much higher than it used to be. Now, when we talk about funding, it is important to note that the decision to back a project is not just about whether a game looks good or has an interesting premise. A publisher or investor is making a judgment call on risk. At the end of the day, they are putting money into something that may take years to release, in an industry where success is becoming harder to predict. So, when they look at a project, they are usually trying to answer the following questions. Can this team actually build what they are promising? Is the scope realistic? Is there a real audience for this type of game? Does the project have a clear path to market? That is really what funding conversations come down to. Not whether an idea sounds exciting on paper, but how much uncertainty still surrounds it. And this is exactly why timing matters, because depending on when you approach a publisher, the level of uncertainty around your project can look very different. There is usually a window where funding conversations make a lot more sense. At one end, some teams start looking for funding too early. Their idea may be strong, but the project is still mostly conceptual. There may not be a prototype yet, no real validation, and limited clarity around scope or production. At that point, it is very difficult for someone external to properly assess what is being pitched. There is still too much uncertainty. On the other hand, some studios wait too long. By the time they start having conversations, the game is already deep into development. The core direction is locked in, resources may be running low, and there is less room for a publisher to help shape the outcome. At that stage, the conversation can feel more reactive than strategic. The sweet spot usually sits somewhere in between. At a point where you already have something tangible to show, like a prototype or a vertical slice, to give a clear sense of the core player experience. When you have a better understanding of scope, budget, and what the game actually needs to get finished. When you may have also gathered some early feedback through playtesting or community response. At that stage, there is still work ahead, but there is also enough clarity for someone else to properly evaluate the opportunity. Another point that often gets overlooked is the fact that not all funding conversations are the same. The type of support you are looking for will naturally affect when it makes sense to start those discussions. If you are looking for funding to support development, those conversations usually need to happen earlier. At that stage, the focus is mainly on whether the team can actually deliver the game. That means having something tangible to show, a realistic understanding of scope and budget, and a clear sense of what the project still needs to get finished. If, on the other hand, you are looking for marketing support, those conversations tend to happen later. By then, the game is already more established. The focus shifts away from whether the game will get finished to how it will perform in the market, how it will stand out, and how it will reach players. Now, even if the timing makes sense and the project is in a good place, there is still one more part to all of this. Being ready is one thing, making that clear to someone else is another. Publishers and investors do not see the full journey behind a project. They only see what is put in front of them. So everything you have done up to this point needs to be translated and communicated in a way that is easy to understand and evaluate. And that is where a good pitch deck becomes so important. A good pitch deck is not just a presentation about your game. It is what helps a publisher quickly understand what you are building, for whom, what stage is it at, and why is it worth backing. It helps turn months and years of work into something that can be properly assessed in a relatively short space of time. And if you get that part wrong, even a strong project can struggle to make the right impression. In one of my previous videos, I went into a lot more detail on pitch decks and why they are one of the most misunderstood parts of game development. I also put together a pitch deck guide that you can download for free, which breaks down each slide, explains what it is there for, and is designed to evolve alongside your project. At the end of the day, all of this really comes back to uncertainty. When a publisher or investor looks at a project, what they're really trying to understand is whether they have enough confidence in the team, in the game, and in the project's chances of actually hitting the market. And this is why timing matters so much. The earlier you start these conversations, the harder it is for someone to properly assess what you're building. But if you wait too long, you may have missed the point where external support could have made the biggest difference. So, if funding is something you are thinking about, the most important thing is to take an honest look at where your project stands today. How much can you already show? How clear is your scope? How well do you understand your audience? And how well can you communicate all of that to someone else? The better you can answer those questions, the more productive those conversations are likely to be. And with that, we reach the end of today's video. I really hope you found it useful, and if you did, please consider subscribing to the channel, as it really helps it grow and allows me to keep making content like this. Also, if you're building a game, thinking about funding, or just interested in learning more about the realities of game development, feel free to check out some of my other videos. Until next time, stay happy and keep gaming.